stiff necks will hang them.
God has spoken to us before. Through Abraham, Noah, Moses, and through Jesus Christ. Why should we be so surprised that God speaks to us now through Mohammed?
Who taught you those names?
They are named in the Quran.
I knew Mohammed when he was an orphan minding sheep.
And we knew Christ as a carpenter.
And from the persecuted to the persecutor. This is the house of Abu Sufyan, the wealthiest and most powerful merchant of Mecca, who saw the Muslims as a threat to the fabric of the social pyramid which sustained him at its peak.
Take one. Doesn't Muhammad realize we live by giving housing to the gods? We own the Kaaba. Every year, the tribes of Arabia come here to Mecca to pray and to buy from us. Now, were we to replace 300 gods with just one, whom we cannot even see, who is supposed to be in Taif and Medina, here in my house, in Jerusalem, on the moon?
After finishing the interior scenes in Tripoli, now we have to do the big battle scenes, which we have kept to the end. And for that, we need the good weather, good guaranteed sun all the time. We found a place near Sebha. That's 1,000 miles deep inside the Sahara Desert. The government officials were very, very helpful in that area. They have just finished the housing project of flats for the people. And before they give them to the people, they gave us 300 flats. And also they gave us a technical school, newly built. It fit perfect for our base of operation. It has beautiful storage space for our wardrobe, for our sets. We have turned one big hall into a first-class restaurant to when we had brought the cooks, the chefs all the way from England.
While preparations were being made for mounting the major battles, a much smaller unit penetrated deep into the unchartable and daily shifting dunes. They went to record some of the hazards faced by the first persecuted Muslims, and despite 20th century technology, they faced some of the hazards themselves. When they were driven out of Mecca, a small group of Muslims set out across the desert on foot, heading for Abyssinia. To record the farewell scene between Hamza and the refugees, soundman David Hildyard faced one of the paradoxical problems of the desert, an excess of silence, in which the smallest sound travels for miles. So to record the scene at close range, he disguised an assistant as one of the refugees and sent him out into the desert with them. At the height of the day, the sun whites out the desert to a featureless sea of sand. But as the sun sinks, the colors deepen and dimples of shadow darken escarpments of dune. In one of these, miraculously, the refugee Muslims find cover when horsemen from Mecca ride out to destroy them. There is a mystical quality about the vast emptiness of the desert beating with intense heat under a daily canopy of blue. Here, man, alone and at the mercy of elements that might at any moment extinguish him, has always been susceptible to communication with God. And it is in country like this that the seeds of Islam grew into the vital religion which within 100 years of the Prophet's death had spread throughout the Middle East. It is the beginning of this evangelical purpose that the film unit is capturing here, the moment when Mohammed sent messengers to Byzantium, to Persia, and to Egypt. dependence on animals in the desert is a commonplace, and that they should exploit such invaluable beasts in conflict amongst themselves was inevitable.
I think over a period of about 6 weeks, I completed the job of finding 100 horses. Getting them to Seba, of course, meant stabling for 100 stallions, where they've got to be kept separate, as we can't tie them up close to each other. So we built 100 stables and put each stallion in his stable. All food, of course, had to be bought in Tripoli, which was a long way away, put on trucks and taken down to Seba. Of course, water being the main problem there. There we had some water bowsers which were brought onto location and were filled each day. Of course, naturally, we used thousands of gallons of water, where horses have got to be watered 3 times a day, especially when filming. Then, of course, grooms, they've got to be trained, the boys who look after the horses, because a lot of them hadn't seen horses before. And eventually they caught on and they turned out to be very good. We had to train the horses to foal and the horses to be ridden by actors.
I'll only do about 2 minutes.
Yeah, all right. We'll keep hashing around. Very important, especially with actors' horses. They've got to be right, they've got to be quiet, got to do the right thing on the day. The stunt horses, not such a big problem because the stunt boys know what they're doing and they more or less handle that side of it.
Jeff, get to your left, Jeff.
None of these horses was a stranger to the idea of a hard day's work. But the kind of general haulage they were used to did not equip them for the roles they now had to play. But they were in the hands of trainers and stuntmen who knew precisely what they wanted from the horses and how to get it. It takes about 2 months to teach a horse to fall, and it pays the stuntmen to train them well, because if a horse falls badly, the broken bones are much more likely to be human than horse. It also pays them to soften up the sand a bit, both in training and before the battle itself. It's a different way of life for the horses, more exciting, certainly, and just possibly more enjoyable.
Camels, providing you've got the time with camels, you need a lot more patience with the actual camel than you do with the horse. The camel can be a very contrary animal. And then again, I had the experience from previous pictures with camels. And the advantage of a camel is you don't need stabling, you can hobble him and you can tie him out, or just, he's a desert animal anyway. Naturally, over the period we've had all these horses, it's only quite natural that you will get attached to them. Not to one, but to most of them. This is the heartbreaking thing, I think, when the day you've got to load them up, take them back, and sell them off, or at least find good homes for them and hope that the people who get them will appreciate them. It's certainly a heartbreak day, the day we say, wrap it up and take the horses away.
But that day is 2 battles away yet, and with the horses trained, they await the arrival of 270 actors and film technicians, tons of weaponry and other equipment, plus the opposing armies.
To shoot the battles, which we have in the film, they are period battles, historic battles, which involve spears, arrows. That means we have to fight hand-to-hand clashes. Therefore, everybody is in the scene. And that means you cannot shoot like modern warfare, shoot one side, shooting with guns, and then shoot the other side. Therefore, we had to plan everything ahead of time. The complete battle be choreographed from A to Z. We have to draw every scene before we decide on it. We had to meet with the art director, cameraman, and assistant directors, and plan the whole battle like a military operation. The difference is that also here you have to plan both sides of the battle. We were excited that we got the assistance of the Libyan army. But the army is trained on modern warfare. So now here we come to teach them on the old sword and arrow fights. It hasn't been easy, but it helped us, of course, tremendously with disciplined soldiers rather than using just normal extras.
The tension of the battle on the screen, the ebb and flow of fortune either side, the death or glory of individual combatants is totally convincing. It seems to be all spears and arrows and hubbub and turmoil, the hideous cacophony of actual conflict. But behind the camera, the story is a little different. The fighter rangers skillfully ensure that no one actually gets hurt, least of all themselves. And here's a troop of exceptionally well-trained and disciplined men mounting a tactical assault on a tea trolley. Nor are the effects of deadly arrows quite what they seem. They're sometimes even reluctant to find their mark. But leaving the battle till last gives the director the opportunity to work off all the aggression and frustration that has built up over the past 18 months. And that time-honored custom of the battlefield, the right to turn your back and run like hell, has to be observed, apparently, whether the battle is true or false. But for most of the protagonists, most of the time is nothing like as hectic as those few minutes on the screen imply. There's plenty of lying around on the endless beach, waiting in vain for the tide to come in. There is even time for the star to talk to Mohamed Sanusi, the associate producer, about the art of filmmaking.
People working the Mohammed films.
Well, I think that there are about 250 actors here, and I think that generally the way pictures are going nowadays, and the content of the pictures, and the violence of pictures, I think that we were all kind of so happy to be in a picture that spoke about a spiritual quality in man rather than the violence in man.
And you just can't help taking your hat off to some of the heroes. And even at the height of the most complex military embroilment, civil routines have to be ruthlessly observed.
Wait for life.
But whatever activity was going on, either in front or behind the camera, there was one element that put a temporary stop to everything. In the first Battle of Bedra, the Muslims were assisted by the timely intervention of a sandstorm. This second Battle of Bedra was frequently and frustratingly interrupted by the same phenomenon. It seemed the wind's purpose was to sandblast this human blemish, this vast film unit, off the smooth face of the Sahara. If that was its intention, it failed. But it certainly held up shooting with its blinding, cutting fog of sand. And yet, when the real thing was required for the story, it had to be provided under controlled conditions by an old Second World War Spitfire engine. Before each day's battle, the hundreds of protagonists had to be relieved of their 20th century paraphernalia. The tire tracks of vehicles were constantly having to be swept out. Hundreds of turbans had to be tied and retied in precisely the same shape as they were the day before. The eyes for all this continuity detail were Phyllis Crocker's and her Arab counterpart, Maher Shafiq Ibrahim's. And it was their responsibility to convey a coherent account of all this apparent chaos of the battlefield in Libya to the two sets of cutting rooms back in London.
Starbo, I tried that. Just lengthen the incoming shot a little bit. Have a look. I think it's much better.
It's a big army.
It's better, isn't it? I had Hussein and I talked about it on the Arabic version as well. He's going to try it. I think he's just set it up next door.
Here, the two films, made by separate casts but filmed by the same unit, were finally separated into two versions by English editor John Bloom and his Arab counterpart, Hussein Afifi.
محمد، عرضت عليك شروط من قبل للاتفاق بينك وبين قريش.
كده أحسن من أول 100 مرة. شوفها كم مرة؟
Sound editor Chris Greenham had the complex task of preparing effects and dialogue for 4-track stereophonic sound. And Maurice Jarre was the composer of the international language of both films, the music.
Yes, I would do it all over again. I am very happy, satisfied for the accomplishment. The film is a reality. But sad for us all who worked on the film to disband. We were 28 different nationalities and cultures. We were able to bridge these different cultures. And we worked under a spirit of cooperation and understanding. And I think if this film would carry the same message, I'd be even happier.
It is the consummate achievement of Mustafa Akkad that he has made a film that not only bridges the cultures, but that it does so in a way that will have enormous public appeal in both East and West. As the Muslims re-enter Mecca on the first pilgrimage, it is Bilal, the first muezzin, who climbs the Kaaba and makes the first call to the faithful from Mecca itself.
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله
God is most great. God is most great. I witness that there is no other God but God. I witness that Mohammed is the messenger of God. Come to prayer. Come to good works. Come to prayer. God is most great.